Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 416.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because here's the thing. When it comes to you going out there, building your brand, building your business, building that cash flow that you are after, here's what I know. We, you, I, everyone, we imagine it to be an uphill climb, and we're okay with that, so long as the results also go continually up. But did you know, have you experienced that part of success where sometimes it's built through the concept of adversity? And you're like, I don't like that part, Jay. Yes, I totally understand. And for those of you who have not yet started that journey, just know it's coming and it's okay. I think one of the things that's necessary for us to come out the entrepreneur, the business person, the husband, the father, the parent, the whatever it is that we see ourselves being on the other end, i.e. successful, requires a little bit of adversity inside the journey. And I think you're going to get a new look at things like adversity today. I think sometimes, in fact, you could say that adversity helps us to find meaning and direction as the world continues to change. In fact, some would even say we develop from the negatives. What I really like about today's guest is that I think you're going to have a new perspective because today's guest, Dan Millman, is a former world champion, athlete, university coach, martial arts instructor, and college professor, which in and of itself sounds really accomplished and confusing to some degree. But what's really interesting is he's also written 17 books, the newest of which we're definitely going to talk about today. But what I want you to do is that I want you to hear what's not just his words, but what's behind the words. Grab that insight that you need in order to take that next step. And most importantly, power on through. So do me a favor. Let's make sure we pay attention. Let's grab something to write with, something to take notes on. You're going to want to bookmark this one because it's time to grow, ladies and gentlemen. Help me welcome Dan Millman. Dan, you there?
Yes, I am, Jay. Good to be here with you.
How are you doing today, sir?
Today, just in this moment, just great. Enjoying speaking with you and looking forward to a stimulating conversation.
Perfect. Now, this being your first time here, I have to ask you the same question that I tend to ask everyone the first time that they're here. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes, if you will. So, you know, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, all of these things, I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. Chief among them is that occasionally as an entrepreneur, we can envision ourselves using our superpower in some way, maybe our product or service, flying around town, helping our customers with our product and service. But also, like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. So if you think about Spider-Man for a moment, there was a time where, you know, he was just a college student, going to school, getting good grades, and taking some photos to make ends meet. Then one day something intervenes. He gets bit by a spider and suddenly he discovers, oh my goodness, I've got a special ability and I get to choose whether I'm going to use it for good or evil. And then he becomes Spider-Man. So my question to you is as follows. I mean, what we want to know is, but before all of the keynotes, the seminars, the workshops, before all of your books, before everything that everyone knows you for today, what we want to know is, who is Dan Millman?
Well, that's an original question I haven't had the chance to answer. So let me start by saying my mother loved to work, and she put me in school as soon as possible. So I was always the youngest kid in the class, and the shortest pretty much too. So when the other children got these concepts, I wasn't quite ready yet. Many parents hold their sons back in school, so they are the oldest kids in their class. Well, I was the opposite. So, but my saving grace was I love to climb trees, and I love to jump off roofs and swing on ropes. So when I was a young boy, I discovered this old trampoline, and I was kind of had a rebirth. There was something I found I loved, and who would have known that jumping up and down on a trampoline would have led to college scholarship, world championship, gymnastics, elite this and that, and eventually what I do now. So that's what my life was like as a kid. I had the usual childhood illnesses and adversities that any child goes through. We take in stride looking back. So that's who I was. I never saw myself writing books. In fact, like most people, having a 5 or 10 page term paper was intimidating to me.
Right.
So, many people, business people as well, entrepreneurs, but anybody, they end up seeing the product rather than the process that brought us here. They see Jay Massey, wow, successful financial expert and outreach and media person, and Dan Millman achieved this and that, but they don't see that bumpy road. You talked about adversity in terms of getting here. It doesn't mean people have to suffer their way to the top. That's not the kind of adversity. That's inevitable. We have illnesses and we bump our toes and we experience pain. Right now, you hear a siren probably in my background. This is Brooklyn, New York.
Right.
And I arranged for that, just as part of our
It was well
conversation.
timed. It was well timed, though.
Thank you. But, there's a concept of voluntary adversity. I sometimes ask audiences, because I teach around the world, I say, please raise your hand if you've experienced physical, emotional, or mental pain in your life. Everybody chuckles and all the hands go up.
Right.
And we point out that because of that pain, that adversity, that difficulty, I ask people, aren't you a little bit stronger now? Maybe a little bit wiser? Maybe even more compassionate for having gone through what you did, and it helped prepare you for that strength to prepare you for anything you might meet in the future. And most people agree with that. And the idea of voluntary adversity, I ask people, have you ever done sports? And many hands go up. And I go, well, that's a form of voluntary adversity. Sports are tougher than life. Life is easier if you don't take up a sport. You don't go through the frustration and the developmental stages. I ask people, have you ever maintained an intimate relationship for more than, say, 2 months? And again, that's voluntary adversity.
Right.
And people laugh because they go, but, I've been married to my partner and guardian angel, Joy, for 43 years now. And yet we bump heads. It's inevitable, sometimes daily a little bit. And anybody who's raised children, voluntary. It's not easy. I love my kids and my grandkids, but it's not easy raising children. And I ask people, are you involved in the world of business? Especially, are you an entrepreneur? That is a form of voluntary adversity. And all those things make us stronger, wiser. We roll up our sleeves, and that's a path of personal development. I mentioned to you before we were on the air that I shattered my right leg, and my whole femur was in 40 pieces just when I was about to go to the World Championships in gymnastics when I was a college senior. I write about that in my book, Way of the Peaceful Warrior. It's a true event, and I probably wouldn't be speaking with you now if that hadn't happened. But I don't recommend fractures as a method of personal development. Let's find other ways to do that.
Right. Well, and this concept, though, and I like the way you're putting it, voluntary adversity, because if you don't give us examples, no one thinks, I know I don't think I'm voluntarily going to put myself in an adverse situation. No, why would I do that? But yet we all do. We just don't think of it that way, and we cry things like, I didn't ask for this. Yes, you did. Why me? Because you asked for it. It's circular to some degree, but at the same time, it's part of the path. So I have a very basic, but yet I think interesting question. If that's, table stakes, if that's what it's going to cost for us to get to where we want to be, why do we resist so much?
Well, of course, people talk about change, and they want certain things to change. Most of us, if life is going great, if we're in one of those grooves, we don't want anything to change. We want to hold on to that. But if things aren't going well, then we're looking for change, and eventually we realize we have more control over changing ourselves than trying to change everything around us to make it fit. So we all know this. All I can do is remind people of what they already know at deeper levels, but we tend to forget. Daily life is a form, as I see it, is a form of spiritual weight training. If you don't lift any weights, you don't get stronger. And, if I have to do 20, 30, 50 push-ups, it's hard. It hurts if you're going to your max. But if you don't do it, you don't develop. I think, look, I was walking into the gym one day when I was coaching at Stanford University, and one of the gymnasts was stretching his legs. He was lying on the floor and stretching his knee all the way, straight leg, all the way to his chest. And the odd thing was I heard him muttering to himself, "Oh, I hate this. This hurts so much." I thought I'd walked into a Mel Brooks movie. I turned to him and I said, "Who's doing it to you?" And some of us live that way. We don't need to make our life more difficult, more strenuous, more stressful than it has to be. But stress is a part of life. The only way to avoid stress is don't care about anything. But most of us do care. We are engaged with life. So we have to take it on and accept the fact that, yes, it's difficult to make cold calls. It's difficult to become an entrepreneur and go through the insecurity and wondering if people are going to be interested in what we do. To be successful at what you do, you have to be good at two things. You have to be good at what you do, and you have to be good at promoting or marketing what you do, because you can't help anybody or serve anyone who doesn't know you exist. So, and nobody likes that. It's difficult. No. But I'm promoting right now. I'm talking with you. It's a media. My book just came out today, The Hidden School, and so that's what I'm doing. But yet we can have a constructive conversation at the same time.
Well, and that's the thing. That's the thing is there's so many things that I think we grow up with that are anti the things that we often want. Mom says don't talk to strangers, yet I want a business, which is, okay, that means I got to talk to strangers. It's like how does all of that come together? How does that work? At the end of the day, there's so many paradoxes on the way. It's like, how is one supposed to make it and reconcile their ability to actually get there?
Well, that's a question all of us have to ask. In other words, the central question, I think, of life on planet Earth for human beings is, how do we turn what we know into what we actually do? We all know it's good to exercise moderately almost every day. We know it's good to eat a healthy diet. Not perfect, but, basically
an apple
healthy.
A day keeps the,
exactly. Yeah. We know these things. We know we have to put out effort in the direction, our desired direction. How do you do that? And what I've come up with is this: it's fine to dream big, but start small and then connect the dots. I found that that's so important because most of us make these resolutions that we're going to do all these things to get where we want to go. And often we bite off more than we can chew. And if we start small, for example, 30 years ago, I started teaching a workout. I call the Peaceful Warrior workout because, that's my brand, kind of my theme, the way of the Peaceful Warrior. And it's a 4-minute routine of deep breathing, flowing movement, and tension release. I've done it every day, almost every day, for the past, almost 40 years now. Almost 40 years. I wake up every morning and I do it.
No commitment.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Got it. Totally.
But you know what? It's not that hard to commit 3.5, 4 minutes. The point is, a little of something is better than a lot of nothing. Simple is powerful. It gets our foot in the door. So that's why I say dream big, but start small. Just take a small action in the direction you want to go. And to me, that is very practical because it builds up over time. That's my experience in the whole Peaceful Warrior workout, is a little bit of something, again, better than a lot of nothing.
Well, what I find What I find interesting is that you bring up a good point. When we're starting something, anything, for whatever reason, we believe, okay, I gotta start. I'm trying to start at the top, and I don't want to start in small increments. But yet, it's almost like the concept of water. It's like one of the strongest forces on the planet, because it just slowly works and wears things down over time. But yet, no one, I know for myself, I often don't naturally go, hey, let's just do this in small little bite-sized chunks and we'll eventually get there. That's usually not how things start out. Again, another paradox. Where does that inverted process come from, and how do we put ourselves in a situation to where we're willing to submit to this school, to this training, to this process?
I think I had a friend who was one of the most famous stuntmen who ever lived. He specialized in high falls. He was in many old movies, Papillon with Dustin Hoffman and Steve McQueen, I think. He did these falls that were like out of 16-story buildings, diving into airbags and so on. And someone once asked him, "How did you start?" And he said, "Oh, jumping off the curb." And that's what we have to do, because in terms of your question, Jay, people get so excited, they build this up in their mind. I have to do all these things at once, and it can be intimidating and discouraging. But if we just say it starts with a phone call, it starts with making a list and checking off one little thing at a time. The Chinese have a saying that you can level a mountain with a spoon with enough patience.
But the challenge is that those first few steps, they feel so like uneventful, like I didn't really do anything. And I know for myself, we can have the tendency to discount them as even important or necessary. So we want to skip to the stuff to where we see, for lack of a better way of putting it, the results.
Well, one of the truisms that I've found in my own life, and your listeners can agree or disagree, but I think it has a certain amount of sense to it, is we can control our efforts. We have the ability to control our efforts, but we cannot control the outcomes in life. We can't control by our will whether we sink a putt every time or make a basket or find love or succeed in business. But by making a good effort, we vastly increase the odds of getting the desired outcome over not making the effort. In a way, effort is success, because that's all we can really control. And if those who are willing to make consistent efforts over time are more likely to develop and improve and get closer to their goals.
Indeed, indeed. Now, you mentioned something at the outset, the concept of change. And, well, today's world is changing every 15 seconds, it feels like. So as an entrepreneur, as I attack something, maybe I see a problem or an issue or my business is growing, but how on earth do I make sure that not only my business change, but I change? Because one of the things I've often observed is that an entrepreneur, we will not out-earn our personal growth, which by default means I've got to change, but it doesn't feel like I can change as fast as necessary sometimes. Hello there, entrepreneur. This is Jay Massey, and what I want to say to you is that the number one mistake that I have ever made in business, number one, has been waiting too long to do the books, waiting too long to get the bookkeepers, the accountants, the CPAs, the CFOs involved, and I don't want you to make that same mistake. That mistake cost me over 6 figures, and now for a significant discount, you have the ability to get your books together using FreshBooks. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. Again, that's gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. FreshBooks is the easy to use software designed to help you, the small business owner, the freelancer, get organized and save time on invoicing, getting paid faster, keeping those books in order so that it becomes a bonus for you to do your taxes as opposed to a burden. Go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary and get started today. And now let's get back to the rest of the story.
Well, I know many people interested in the field of business and entrepreneurship, and they want to succeed and achieve. They read many books on how to do this and copy the people who are successful. And if you just model them and do what they do, you can be great too. That may be true, that may not. Each of us has a different destiny, but we can be greater. A woman named Barbara Rasp once wrote, "The lesson is simple, the student is complicated." And we complicate our lives in so many ways. For example, something I have in one of my books, just a brief quote, to progress toward your goals and to reach your dreams, please choose one of the following methods. Now, I'm about to relate two methods to reach our goals and achieve our dreams. The first one is very popular, but the second one is the one I really recommend. Here's the first one. Find a way to quiet your mind, create empowering beliefs, raise your self-esteem, and practice positive self-talk so that you can find your focus and affirm your power to free your emotions and visualize positive outcomes so that you can develop the confidence to generate the courage, to find the determination, to make the commitment, to feel sufficiently motivated to do whatever it is you need to do. Whew.
That was a lot.
That's a lot. The second method, you can just do it. Because life always comes down to that. What will you do? Many of us are focused on having the right thoughts, positive attitude, positive thoughts, and quiet mind, and the right emotions like courage, confidence, peace, happiness, love. But we have less control over what emotions pass through us, like the weather. We have less control over what we happen to be thinking. We don't have spam filters in our heads. All sorts of thoughts arise.
I will
Positive,
take one,
negative.
though. I will take one.
Wouldn't that be handy? But we can control what we do, no matter what we happen to be feeling. That's a real form of liberation, very practical. Is to, a Japanese sage once said there are three principles for living wisely and well. He said, first, accept your thoughts and feelings, positive or negative, whatever they happen to be, as natural to you in the moment. By accepting them, just let them arise, notice them, and move on. The second thing is focus on a goal. What do you need or want right now? And the third is do what needs to be done in line with your goals, no matter what you happen to be feeling and thinking. This is a radically different approach to living than the complicated path of fix your emotions, fix the mind, make the thoughts just right, and read 26 books on this and underline and highlight them. I sometimes ask people, how many of you have read a book on positive thinking? Lots of hands go up. And then I go, great. How many of you have had only positive thoughts for the last, say, week? All the hands go down. But people believe if I'd underlined it, if I'd done all the exercises, I'd be having more positive thoughts. It's very complicated and slow, and it frankly doesn't necessarily work. Yeah. But those who learn to focus on what do I need to do now and just do it, again, small, start small, but do it, that makes a difference over time.
Yeah, I can hear that. So let me ask this. For those who may be in the same situation as myself and may not be overly familiar with your bodies of work, let me ask probably a very basic question. What is a peaceful warrior?
Yeah, for those not familiar with my work, I would define a peaceful warrior as a balance. In other words, all of us are peaceful warriors in training because every one of us is striving to live with a more peaceful heart, less stress, more inner peace, and so on. But there are times in our lives, and you know this very well, Jay, and your listeners do too, there are times in our lives we need a warrior's spirit. My old mentor, Socrates, the man I called Socrates, was a service station attendant, played by Nick Nolte in the Peaceful Warrior movie. He once said, I call myself a warrior, a peaceful warrior, because the most important battles we fight are on the inside. Because if we can conquer those battles with self-doubt, insecurity, fear, procrastination, if we can conquer those battles, the externals just fall into line. We just tackle them one at a time. So that's what peaceful warrior means, peaceful heart warrior spirit. And it's not just the literal warriors, people who put themselves in harm's way, Secret Service, police, and so on, military. It's all of us, because it calls on that inner warrior inside of each of us to roll up our sleeves and address the challenges of daily life. It's like a school. Daily life is our classroom.
No doubt.
And, yeah.
No doubt. I mean, I once heard that the largest nation in the world is procrastination, and the idea of being able to no longer be a part of that nation in peace sounds really, really pleasing to the ear. And now with your latest writing, the Hidden School, I mean, I gotta ask, if it's hidden, how do I find it?
Well, good question. Let me just provide a context. The book I'm best known for is called Way of the Peaceful Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
Wrote it in 1980. It's still doing extremely well. It gets passed from kids to parents, parents to kids across the generations. And that book was incomplete. Even though it was a full story, people seem to really like it. 4 million people, 29 languages so far. But
that's a few.
The point, yeah, that's a few. But the point, and by the way, the book failed when it first came out. It died.
Love it.
Yeah, the editor had put on the subtitle a basically true story because it mixes a lot of fact with some fiction. And the bookstores didn't know where to put it. There was no Amazon back then. And so it got into almost no stores and it died. It went out of print. And I figured I'd had a brief career as a writer. And 3.5 years later, this old gentleman who was a former publisher, he'd retired, he found a copy of the book and loved it so much, he said, I'm going back into publishing. And then it started. It took him 2 years to get the book chains to take one copy in each store. So it started slowly, but then the word of mouth began. And then it ended up being some kind of phenomenon. But that book, there were parts I didn't write. And 10 years later, I wrote another part of that story called Sacred Journey. And then finally, 37 years after the first book was published, after I'd written 16 other books, it was time to write The Hidden School, which completes that story. It can be read by someone who's never read any of my work. It stands alone as an adventure. And it's a quest. It's an adventure story. But it has some key elements of reminders about living kind of seeded into the story. In any case, the Hidden School refers to a school that is in plain sight. It's in front of us, but we often miss it. There's that saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But what that really means is when the student is paying attention, the teacher appears everywhere. And we start to really learn life's lessons and evolve more quickly, more gracefully. And so, lessons repeat themselves until we learn them. And if we don't learn easy ones, they get more dramatic. We've all noticed that.
Some of us have noticed some dramatic lessons more than we like to admit. But yes, exactly. Now, you said something that sounded, again, paradoxical at best, oxymoronic probably even. You said evolving gracefully. Is that even possible?
Yeah, it sounds like something George Carlin would take on, or another comedian. Yeah, how does one evolve gracefully? Well, look, let's put it this way. Life comes at us in waves of change. We all know that. We can't predict them. We can't control these waves. They just arise. We wake up one day and life has changed. But what we can learn to do is to surf. And the better we learn to surf these waves of change, to kind of flow with it, make use of it, like a good martial artist. Martial artists don't resist the other person. Then whoever's stronger is going to win, and there's always going to be people stronger. Martial artists learn to use the energy, the flow, the force, and step aside and make use of it. In other words, Masahide, a Japanese poet, once said, "Now that my house is burned down, I have a better view of the rising moon." So that's an approach to life, a mental approach, where we learn to flow with what happens to us as much as possible. We don't have to pretend to like it all the time, but we say, how can I use this to lift? How can I use this as a form of spiritual weight training and get stronger from it? Yeah. I've overcome difficulties before, I can do it again. And all of us, right now, when we look back on difficulties we've had, we can see that we're stronger now, that we're more prepared for whatever may come. It's like building up our immune system in a way. So that's what I mean by evolving gracefully, more gracefully.
Got it. It sounds like an entry-level course, though, to some degree, when it comes to the idea of a school. And when you think of the structure of a school, it's like, evolving gracefully 101 is kind of, table stakes just to begin that process. But let me ask what might seem like an odd question. When it comes to attending this school, what's the application process? How much is the tuition? What does that really cost us in terms of time, money, effort, energy? And is this a school that requires that some people just can't attend, in your opinion?
Let me tell you about a dream I had, and I'm telling you this for a reason, because you may have had this dream, and some of your listeners have too. In fact, I believe all of us have had something like it, and it's very simple. I have a final exam, some really important exam, midterm or final, and in the dream, I can't find my way there. Or, even more common, I suddenly realize when I see I have this final that I enrolled in the course, but I forgot to attend. I never went to any classes. That's the anxiety dream I've had as a recurring dream over time, many years since college or high school. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this, Jay, is because this describes our situation in life. We're enrolled, all of us, in a full-time school on planet Earth called daily life.
Right.
And most of us don't know the courses we've enrolled in. And in one of my books, actually two of my books, I'm not going to mention them now because I don't want to confuse your listeners, but they can always look on my website later if they want to see. But it goes through 12 courses all of us are enrolled in, such as discover our worth, because people with low self-worth tend to self-sabotage and get in our own way, or reclaim our will, turning what we know into what we do. The third is energizing our body. The fourth, you'll relate to this, managing our money. The fifth, taming our mind, and I have a different approach to that than many people. The sixth is embracing our emotions. And the next, trusting our intuition. And it goes on into 12 areas of life. There's a very specific curriculum all of us are enrolled in. This is the bigger picture, and this is what success really means, addressing all these areas. Because there are people who are very good, they make a lot of money, but not very happy folk. Right. So they haven't addressed some of the other elements in school. So this is a bigger picture element in life. It's funny you said it sounds like a 101 course. Absolutely. Absolutely, Jay, because I try to keep things simple and basic. I learned as an athlete that those who had mastered the basics, and you know this, John Wooden, the basketball coach, had his hot shots going back to shooting free throws and how to put socks on properly so as not to get blisters. So the point is, if we master the basics, that raises our potential at the same time.
You know, there's a number of people out there, and I would put myself into this category, to where we derive a certain amount of satisfaction from feeling like we've completed something. So this school, does it ever end?
Not while we live.
Yeah.
But you know what? But at the same time, every day we complete something.
Right.
You know, if we define success as reaching the top of the mountain, then we fail with every step. We haven't reached the top yet. But if we redefine success in terms of the law of process, of every step in the right direction, then we have many successes every day. We take a step in the right direction. So there are these mini completions. Life is a series of moments, and the quality of each moment is the quality of our life.
Indeed. So if I was to synthesize everything that you've said thus far, someone listening could say, Dan's telling me to go find some more adversity so I can get better at what I want to be.
You don't have to look for adversity. But as I said, if you do business, if you raise kids, if you're in a relationship, you've already found it.
Right.
It's not just bad things that happen like accidents or illnesses.
Sure.
We all know, I mean, Scott Peck, he had a famous book. I forget, what was it? Maybe there was The 7 Habits. But he started it, life is difficult. That was the first sentence. And we have to face that. That's why we're all peaceful warriors in training. To expect it to be easy. Somebody once said, why does life have to be so difficult? I said, I can tell you how to make life much easier. Let's see. Never take on any responsibility. Don't form any intimate relationships. Don't have kids. Don't get married. Just kind of live in a little trailer in the woods somewhere. And life will seem simpler in many ways. But is that what we're here for? Are we here for easy? Well, yes, we can make things easier by doing things efficiently like any good athlete or martial artist. But we're not here for easy.
No. I agree with you. We're not here for easy, but okay, let's talk about those moments when we feel that way. We're like, it can be easy, or, I'm opting out of life for now. Today, adulting is not happening. So, this is what we're doing. But yet, at least for me, even that feels like adversity because I can't stay in that state and go, I feel like, I don't know, like it's still hard to stay in that state because it's like I can't just sit around and do nothing. There's stuff to be done. There's growth to be had. There's more to see, to do, to interact, and people to help, etc. So I don't even think that's a solution.
Doing nothing is very difficult. I find that many vacations, recognizing that life is a series of moments, we all have enlightened moments, stupid moments, we all have moments of rest, moments of work, and to appreciate all those moments. They balance each other out. And it's really, there's no way to put my work. That's why I had to write 17 books. There was a man named Stanislaw Lek who wrote a book called Unkempt Thoughts, and he once said, I wanted to tell the world just one word. Unable to do that, I became a writer. And so, they say you teach what you most need to learn. I must have needed to learn a lot, Jay, because after 17 books. But there's a kind of culmination, a higher teaching that reminds us essentially of the value of our life. And it helps us to do what we take for granted, to appreciate our everyday life, the opportunity to have a life as a human being on planet Earth, how rare that is. And that's one of the central themes of the Hidden School. There's even a meditation I teach in that book, believe it or not, a 4-minute meditation. My favorite place to do it is on the subways here in New York City, between stops. And this meditation is on the process of dying and what we give up as we die and what we have to relinquish. It's both a rehearsal for death and a profound rehearsal for life. And that's toward the end of the book, because it helps us to remember the value of our lives, the difficult moments, the easy moments, all of them.
Nice. Well done. Well done. I like what I'm hearing. And in fact, I'm going to take a stab and say that there's a number of people who have listened this far and they like what they're hearing and they want to find out more. They want to find out more of, what you've got going on, find out maybe where they can catch up with you, even possibly grab a copy of your latest and greatest. What's going to be the best way for them to find out more?
The simplest way is to visit peacefulwarrior.com. And so we renovated our site. It's a really pretty site, and it's, I hope, user-friendly. And the book is featured there in all my books. There's even a free life purpose calculator people may find intriguing. They click on that calculator. They can get some instant insight into some of the core issues of their own life path.
Awesome. A life purpose calculator. I'm hoping the numbers add up right now. So that's good. Now, before we go, though, I have one more question. I'm kind of interested in hearing what it is that you're going to say, because I think it's going to be unique. Let's pretend for a moment that there's a number of people who are listening. And in fact, there's one person listening, Dan, who's standing on the precipice, that edge. They think, you know what, I'm going to throw my hat into this ring. I'm going to do this entrepreneur thing. Or they're going, you know what, it's time. I've done 6 figures. Now it's time for 7. I've done 7. It's time for 8. 8 going for 9. They are ready for it. However, you and I both know that often when we make goals like that, or intentions, and put them out there, there's this constant companion that tends to come in the form of a voice in the back of our head. And it often reminds us of, who we're not, what we haven't done, and why we can't do it. And for some people, they're related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that this time they're going to follow through. They're actually going to do what you suggest, and they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
Well, I mentioned it before, and I'll say it again. Start small. Take a small action. Little things can make a very big difference. Cus D'Amato, a boxing coach, once said, Heroes and cowards feel exactly the same fear. They just respond differently. So the peaceful warrior's way essentially is not a way of fixing our insides. It's a way of action. So taking a small action, that's the next thing. And the next thing they do will be different for each person, whether it's making a phone call, making a list. But that's how they bring themselves into life, by taking a small action and then another small one and then another small one, connecting the dots.
Nice. Well said, and I love it. I definitely appreciate the fact that you have a message that we all need, and most importantly, that you've been doing it for a significant period of time, and it just speaks to the fact that you care, and I appreciate that. And I definitely thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge, your wisdom, as well as your insight here with us today at the Cashflow Diary, sir.
It's been my pleasure, Jay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? That means go over to peacefulwarrior.com. Why? Because you probably want to be one, but more importantly, try out that life purpose calculator. I think you'll enjoy it. Nonetheless, here's what I know. I know that you want to redefine success, and hopefully you picked that up and understand that this process, this journey that we are all on, well, your development is a big part of the reward. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.